Good morning. So today I wanted to do something that's a little out of my wheelhouse normally. As always, if you hear pitter-pattering happening, my pug just ate her breakfast and she has the post-breakfast zoomies. She's very excited she ate something. As well, I apologize for the lighting. I'm in Nova Scotia and it is just so rainy here. I've been trying to wait a couple of mornings now for some better lighting to film a video, but unfortunately, it's rainy. We're in that season now. But I wanted to come on here today to talk a little bit about Divine Rivals. So again, this is a little out of my wheelhouse where I don't normally just do singular book reviews for a video, but Divine Rivals is an exception where it was one of my most anticipated releases and it wound up being my first 5-star in quite a while. And it's very rare that I give a 5-star to a YA in general. I'm 30 years old. You have to tick a lot of boxes to get a 5-star for a YA at this age and just in my reading taste. But I had high hopes for this one because I was so enraptured in Rebecca Ross's writing to begin with. I read A River Enchanted and A Fire Endless, and I absolutely loved both of those. I loved her lyrical style of writing. I loved her characters and the way she's able to make you fall in love with them quite easily. I feel like that's a very specific talent. And I also think Rebecca Ross is able to create such atmospheric stories, whatever the setting might be. She's able to create a world in which you are falling into itself, and really you can see everything, you can smell the air. She's so talented in creating that, and this was no exception in that. But really, Divine Rivals has taken off, and I had a hard time getting my hands on this book in general, so I had forgotten to pre-order it, went to the store a couple of times to pick it up and it was always sold out, even when it said there was some in stock. And when trying to order it online, unfortunately it had to go back to reprint because it sold out online, so my order was unceremoniously canceled rather than waitlisted. So then I just decided, you know what, whenever fate allows, I will stumble upon this book. And that was this previous weekend where I went into my local independent bookshop to pick up a fantasy I had been waiting for, and right there in the front I saw 2 copies of Divine Rivals and I was so excited. I couldn't believe my luck. They hadn't been there the last time I visited about a week ago, so of course, I dug right into it as soon as I could, and I was not at all disappointed. So Divine Rivals, I would also recommend you go in as blindly as possible. I had seen no reviews. I actively avoided plot points and reviews and spoilers and everything like that because I wanted to fall into this Rebecca Ross tale similar to how I did in A River Enchanted, not really knowing anything. And that is, I would say, the best way to go into all of her stories. You allow yourself to fall in love with the story she's telling. But in this world, we're living in a post-industrial fantasy world. So trains have just been invented. We are living very much in that historic time frame. But however, in this world, there are gods that are currently at war and the humans have been dragged into it. So our main heroine is named Iris, who we find out right at the beginning, her and her brother are very close, and her brother is going off to war to fight against a tyrannical deities who is trying to capture and enslave a lot of humankind in a vengeful plot against another god who he previously had in his class but got free. So humans really are kind of repercussions of these gods' war, and I think it is handled very well. Simultaneously, we're also following Kit, who is a rival of Iris in the local newspaper that they work for. And while rivals, they definitely have this sort of banter and connection that is really easy to understand why there is this magnetism between their rivalry that then turns into friendship. But I will say, if you're going into this expecting a very, very heavy fantasy, I would say this book is divided into 3 parts, and probably the all of part one, we are really just being introduced into Iris's life, her mindset, her struggles, and vaguely introduced to Kit as well. And a lot of their relationship grows in part 2 and 3. And a lot of the fantasy aspects are more heavy in part 3, so you do have to wait for that payoff. But I will say the characters in this are so easy. I read this in a 24-hour period, so it's so easy to get through, especially if it's like rainy and the top of fall. It's just so compulsively readable. As well, I will say that the romance takes a while to get going, but that is classic Rebecca Ross as well. From what I've read from her, is she divides the time within her novels pretty well between giving you time to get to know the characters, giving you time to get to know the world, and then spending time with this relationship developing. It is enemies to lovers, and the interesting portion of this is our characters fall in love between magical typewriters, that they are anonymously sharing their lives with each other. Unbeknownst to them, it is between their rival, and they are opening themselves up and being quite vulnerable and finding friendship that develops later into feelings within these stories that they are exchanging. This also deals a lot with grief in ways I didn't really expect. A lot of times I find myself somewhat disconnected with YA because I feel it can sort of not pander to its audience, but speak down a little bit, whereas I think sometimes adults forget just how intelligent younger people are. And I will say that the characters in this are, Iris is 18 and Kit is 19, I believe, so it is the older side of young adult as well, teetering into, I would say, new adult fantasy rather than teen and YA. But I do think Rebecca Ross does something really well here, which is she doesn't talk down to her audience, and she allows what needs to be done in the story to be done. There is no plot armor within this story, and people that you learn to fall in love with, or people that are dear even to our characters, do fall into peril, and I think that was really important to tell this story. So I think those are some things she did really, really well in this. And I will say, classic Rebecca Ross, the writing was absolutely lyrical as well as compulsively readable. I know A River Enchanted gets mixed reviews because while lyrical, it is a little bit slower, whereas Divine Rivals, I feel like Rebecca Ross catered to her audience very, very well here. I was a little nervous because authors transcending where they usually are coming from. I don't know if Rebecca Ross started in YA, but what I do know is I connected with this author in adult fantasy, and sometimes when authors are making transitions between adult to YA or YA to adult, you can kind of feel that in their writing. But I think Rebecca Ross did exactly right in this novel, and it was everything it needed to be for its younger audience. It was very accessible. It didn't pull punches, however, and I feel like the characters definitely acted within their age, sometimes handling things a little bit immaturely, but ultimately I think she also did a really great job in showing growth in a novel that is 350 pages. So I hope that gives you a good idea of what is needed to acquire a 5-star for me, especially with YA. Like I said, that can always be a little bit difficult, but I feel like Rebecca Ross hit everything I needed to, and I also just think it was the perfect time for me to be reading it. I believe it's September 7th right now, 6th or 7th. I'm just moving into fall. I just started picking up my fall reads, and Divine Rivals was honestly the perfect read for this time of year. And I also think it being set in a post-industrial fantasy world where we are quite limited in how we are able to move, how our characters are able to travel, what society expects from different people, and everything like that. I felt like Rebecca Ross was very intentional in the time frame that she chose, and there was a really significant payoff with that. So basically, I just have rave reviews. I know this book already has garnered so much popularity, so it goes without saying I would definitely recommend it. I hope this was a better sort of review. I wanted to keep it non-spoilers because I went in with basically no knowledge of it, and I just had such a great time. So it goes without saying that I would recommend this. I feel like this is news to no one, that this is a really great read for the fall season. So with that, I will end the video here and say thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.